This is the Detroit Sports Podcast Network.
The Lions are contenders. The NFC is wide open. They should be undefeated. They have really shown to be one of the best teams in the whole league. They're just getting started. Anthony Zettel is a surefire Pro Bowler. They still got to get some guys back from injury. This team is going to steamroll anybody that faces them. Only the refs can beat this team. The Lions are legit. This should be an easy victory against the Carolina Panthers.
Back to life, back to reality, back to life, back to reality, back to the here and now, yeah. Show me how to decide what you want from me. Tell me maybe I could be there for you.
First off, that's just an awesome song from the 90s, Soul to Soul. It's the Hindsight 20 podcast. I'm your host, Jerry Mallory. I want to thank each and every one of you for listening. Yes, we're here. Win, lose, or draw. Unfortunately, we're on the losing side of things this past weekend, this Sunday. They tried to make it interesting. They tried to get the comeback, but it was just not enough. Listen, every week, every Monday preferably, sometimes the schedule switches up just a little bit, like when we have guests like we have today. You hear me, all right? Hindsight 20, Detroit Lions podcast, proud member of Detroit Sports Podcast Network, and a proud member of prideofdetroit.com. Of course, hit me up, Twitter, at Jerry Mallory NFL. So it's Tuesday, and a lot of you will be hearing this Tuesday evening, perhaps even Wednesday. So the game is here and gone. I'm not here to break down those particular aspects of the game. I'm going to give you a few points, a few aspects that maybe you guys didn't really get covered already, Detroit media. And to close the show out today, we have a treat as Chris Gandy will be joining us, breaking things down. We got that chemistry, man. It's like a little Kobe and Shaq situation. I don't know who's Kobe or who's Shaq. I'll be either one. I'm flexible, all right? Although I used to be mean in the post back in my day on the mean streets of Detroit, Michigan. So maybe I'll be Shaq and Chris Gandy could be Kobe. But either way you want to slice it, it's a dynamic duo. So you'll hear the two of us a little bit later on in the show. So let's talk about this game, because coming into it, after that 3-1, we were living high of the hog, and there were aspirations. And I did the podcast last week when I said, here's the extreme happy, here's the extreme caution. And the extreme caution is rearing its ugly head. And so you're wondering, man, because you look at the 3 victories, Arizona, Giants, Minnesota, who knows? They had some injuries. And so the 2 losses, they're both at home and they're against good teams. So it's like, what are we? What are we as a team? Well, guess what, guys? It is game 5 of the season and we still don't know who we are because we don't know what the NFL is. Okay. Look at the New Orleans Saints. First 2 weeks, then they went ahead and whipped up on Carolina. They went to England. It's England's weird, dude. You can't take any information you get from them England games and really roll with it because they look like a defensive juggernaut. Now, granted, they were playing, I want to call him Jay Cutler and the Dolphins, but, so we don't know who this team is. The Patriots 3-2, they look good. They look bad. Who knows? People probably loving the Packers now, but those wins that they got versus those teams, I'm not saying they're anything special either. This is my point. 5 games in, we don't know who we are because we don't know what the NFL is. So let's not go too far in either direction. And I'm talking about the negative direction now. The Stafford is this or that negatively direction. The Greg Robinson is horrible direction. Well, you can go on that one. The Eric Ebron is horrible direction. Well, I'll move on. But seriously, as a team, let's not jump off the bandwagon. And maybe we shouldn't have been as high on the bandwagon after the 3-1 start, almost beating Atlanta Falcons. We're getting information. I think this team is going to be in the mix. It's going to be a divisional bout, man. I think just like a few years ago, I think it's going to come down, or not even a few years ago, last year, and then 2 years before that, I think it's going to come down to that last game of the year at Ford Field. And can we exorcise those demons that are the Green Bay Packers? We have to wait and see. Now, I'm jumping ahead. I'm jumping ahead to tell you to not jump ahead. If that makes any sense. I'm doing what I don't want you to do, like a hypocritical parent. But you get my drift. Let's not go too far in either direction. All right. We lost to the Panthers. I get it. It's disappointing. Wanted that win. but Stafford's still a good quarterback. This team is still going to be okay. The defense is going to be okay. But against those better teams, against those better quarterbacks, and this is a big test this upcoming week because you got Drew Brees, you got Michael Thomas and those boys down in New Orleans. It is gaining more information game by game. All right. Still 5 games in. Things are early. We'll have to wait and see. Now, I was chatting with my buddy after the game and a point was brought up that I don't hear a lot of people talking about. We're going to touch on that. It's the Jim Caldwell decision to not go for the onside kick to end the game. Now, he's one of the bigger Jim Caldwell haters. So he didn't like the move. This buddy of mine is generally a kind of a bold person when it comes to, his takes on sports. So, him going for an onside kick that makes sense. He's kind of like that. And there's nothing wrong with it. Love the guy. Jim Caldwell decided not to go for it. You're probably looking at that clock. Well, to me, the clock didn't matter because you were 1 first down away from the game being over. Field position really didn't matter because, again, 1 first down away from the game being over. Whether they got that first down, they started at the 25 or the 50, we had to stop them from getting that first down. So Caldwell's looking at it though like, hey, I trust my defense. If we stop them here, then they have to punt it. We're going to have good field position. And that's kind of his rationale on it. I agree with my buddy. We don't agree all the time, but I think in this instance, the fact that, the offense or the defense did struggle. We got some stops toward the end. We did get a series of stops to get closer. I still would have kicked that onside kick because even if we don't get the ball, you're still looking at the same thing. All right. You're still looking at needing to get that stop. You're down 3 points. And so you don't technically have to go the whole length of the field. You just have to get in Matt Prater range, which is, we know what that is. That's 50 plus. All right. So even if, you're worried about field position, you'd have had, with granted getting that stop, about 2 minutes and you'd have to go down the field maybe 30 to 40 yards just to tie it up. And you still have a chance to try to win it. So, those one of those things where, people like to second guess Caldwell a lot, but I haven't heard a lot about that particular one. I did hear some rumblings about him using the timeout so early. You kind of let them run the clock and then, that's what happens when you're down 3 scores though. You see what I mean? So the moral of the story is Detroit Lions don't go down 3 scores and we don't have to worry about, using timeouts with 5 minutes left, et cetera, et cetera. So the game's in the rearview mirror and, we move on. Now looking at this week, we brought in defensive lineman Dayton Jones. I don't know. Big man, defensive end. I want to say he played at UCLA. I'm going to look that up right now as we're speaking. Former first round pick of the Green Bay Packers. For me, it was, I guess the Lions looked at it and said, all right, are we going to bring back Armonte Bryant or are we going to try to do something different? And they went a different direction. So far, Dayton Jones hasn't been great at the NFL level. He has left a lot to be desired for. I think Armonte Bryant probably has a better resume on the field, but when we go off the field, well, that's the issue at hand with one Armonte Bryant. It's the only reason he's not on the roster right now or an NFL roster is why the Browns gave up on him. Talented guy, but that's the issue with him. So Dayton, I think one issue looking at him, I think he is better suited as he is a bit of a tweener. He's about 280, 6'ish. So that kind of would say 3-4. But I think his skill set, in my opinion, is better suited as a 4-3 defensive end in the mode of a Jason Jones, one of the bigger defensive ends that in weird packages occasionally can slide on the inside. Think Jason Jones, think Kerry Hyder, another guy that was bigger, but a defensive end, next to Ziggy Ansah. So I like him. It's going to be a rotational piece. Sometimes you put in a scheme that doesn't work. They moved him around on the defensive side. The Green Bay, they run a 3-4, even standing him up as a linebacker. I think hand on the ground, in that 4-3 as a defensive end may suit his skill set better. So look for him to get the occasional, pass rush down situation. It'll ease him in, but I think he could be a good rotational fit for us. Now, speaking of misfits and, being in a 3-4, remember big Corey Williams for the Green Bay Packers? That was a guy that, with the Cleveland Browns, he looked legit. All right. He was decent for those guys and, the big guy defensive tackle. Then he moves to Green Bay and they play him in a 3-4. On the defensive line, it is important where you are, whether it's a 3-4 or a 4-3. Some guys fit one scheme better than the other. And so Corey Williams leaves Green Bay, the 3-4, and comes over here as a defensive tackle 4-3, and him along with Ndamukong Suh made a pretty good pairing for a year or two. That rhymes. Maybe I should be a rapper. All right, guys, that was just like a brief little, the one big news piece to come out. We're still waiting to hear more information on injuries. In fact, I think I'm going to try to slide on Pride Detroit Thursday, do a Facebook Live as more injury situations come out. We are missing, several guys. We're waiting for Decker to come back because, man, Greg Robinson looks bad. But also Kenny Golladay, I think he brings an element of stretching the field that we don't have. So as the weeks progress or as the days progress, we'll get more information on Kenny Golladay and maybe some updates on Decker. We had a little minor update this past week, maybe with Sam Martin as well. So the little news pieces and just the final take, as we put a nail in the coffin of Detroit versus Carolina. Tap, tap, tap. There is that nail. It's over. We move on. So when we come back after the break, we're going to talk to Chris Gandy. Then I'll give you a little bit of information on my thoughts in regards to New Orleans versus Detroit. So stick around as we keep the train rolling right here on the Hindsight 20 podcast. All right, guys, thanks for sticking around. Hindsight 20, second half, or it's a little bit longer than half. It's a fragmented show today. The first half was 10 minutes. The last is almost 30, but heck, we're a little non-conventional. That's what we do on here. So, we got a chance to speak with Chris Gandy, a little bit earlier in the day. So let's take a listen as he gives his takes on the Lions and his good uncle, Jim Caldwell. Chris Gandy, the one and only. What's happening, man? It's been a while since you've been on. How you been doing, bro?
Outstanding. Fighting off a little colds and just trying to stay on top of the Lions emotions, but glad to be on the show.
Did the Lions literally make you sick?
No, you just know Michigan weather, right? Went to go to the big house and definitely caught Michigan State beating on Michigan, as I call it, the little house now. It's Spartan there. But, I just sat through that rainstorm, man. I had a sweatshirt on. Got a little bit of a cold. Had one a couple of weeks ago from a Jamaica trip. So, hey, man, sometimes they just come and get you when you need to sit your butt down, and that's what I'm doing right now.
Okay, I feel you, man. Hopefully you get some chicken soup and all the things you need to get well. Now, before we talk about the Lions, and that's our deal here on this show. You were there. You were at the big house, man. Like, just briefly talk me through that. The emotions of the game, the storm. Just if you could just wrap that up in a nutshell, man. I know you had a good time.
Well, admittedly, I wasn't too optimistic about the Spartans' season, given the question marks with Lewerke. But the first few games, he's proved it. He can throw the ball down the field, give or take. He's not going to be a high accurate guy down the field, but I knew he could run. I knew he was athletic in the pocket. He could get away from some things. So going in, I thought it would be a close game, but I thought Michigan would take it. But then when I saw that we went up 14 to 3 at halftime, yep, and I saw that storm coming through, I said, "Oh man, this is going to shape up." But I was not prepared. So emotions wise, it was high, then it was low, then it went through the roof, and then I was soaking wet, watched a little bit of the fourth quarter in the concourse because it was just unbearable. You couldn't even stand in the storm. Some of my compadres were there with rain suits on, but I was not prepared. I didn't expect to be in a monsoon for a football game. This is a football game. I've never experienced anything like this. This was like none other. And then to walk away 2-0 for me being in the big house with another victory when Michigan State's playing there. It's great emotions, man. Love it. I love to see Michigan fans walking out pissed off with a frown on their faces, right? Won't even make eye contact with me, right? It's hilarious because before the game, there's so much trash talk, but it's friendly. But after the game, they did not expect that result.
So 2-0 at the big house. Were you at the infamous game?
In my end zone. I was there 2 years ago.
No way, man. Are you serious?
In my end zone, I don't think I've ever blacked out at a football game until that moment. I literally was just like, wait, did that just happen? And then went crazy. So, it's similar to last time. Michigan wiped the scoreboard really quick, was ready to get folks out of there. But, it doesn't top any sports moment. Number one sports moment in my life. And I don't think that will be beaten until the Lions win the championship.
Yeah.
Win an NFL Super Bowl, I should say. We've got championships, but not a Super Bowl.
Yeah, man, that's crazy. I didn't know you were at that game, and that's the weirdest thing. I actually cut that game off right before the punt because I was supposed to take my mom out to dinner that day. And I remember I'm fresh off the ACL injury. I'm on medical from work, and it's a crazy time, man. But anyway, supposed to take her out to dinner, so I actually cut the game off right before the punt, dude, because I was running late. I was trying to watch the game. But, you can't keep mom waiting too long. So I said, all right, it's over. I actually cut it off. Me, my wife, my mom, and then we ended up going to, I don't know where, like Red Robin or something like that. And I didn't know I still didn't know that Michigan lost that game. And then I think one of the waiters mentioned it or said something, or it was on TV. Crazy. Kind of the exact opposite ends of the spectrum. You were there live at your end zone. I didn't even know about it, thinking the game is over. But we digress. This isn't an NCAA podcast, although Michigan State, there's tons to talk about, and it's good to break free from the Lions every now and then.
I want to make a comment because
go ahead.
Funny. Leaving the Lions game on Sunday and leaving the big house on Saturday, right? It was two different emotions.
180, baby.
And I literally said to my boy Irv, who we used to do a podcast with, I said to him, hey, would you trade that Spartan win for the Lions victory today? And I literally had to think about it for a second. I bleed green, but I think my emotions with the Lions run higher, right?
Right.
Because State has accomplished some things, right? They've been to the BCS, right? Top 4 bowl game.
You want it, man. That's where we're at with the Lions. We want it so bad.
We want it so bad, man. So leaving that game Sunday, man, I was just, energy level was low going into the game. I was afraid of Cam Newton. Just when you look at what he went through that week leading up with his dumb comments, right? Whether they were taken out of context or whatnot. Let's not go there because that could be a whole show.
Right.
But don't agree with his comments. They were demeaning. Leave it at that. But I thought to myself, man, don't give this guy no energy. Don't give him anything to play a little bit harder.
Exactly.
And here he is, walked out and had a great game, right?
And he's getting healthier week by week, too. People forget about that.
He is. If you look at what people were saying about Cam Newton after they lost to the Saints, they were basically asking, wow, is Cam Newton washed up? Is he never going to be the same? Should he be on the luck program, sitting on the bench? Preseason, did it hurt him? And then he comes out, throws 3 touchdowns against the Lions, and here they are ranking him as the, number 3 team in some power rankings out there. So just crazy. It's week by week league, man.
I got a pet peeve, and you know how I go, man. I don't always just stick to the formula, the format. I'm sick of cross sports referencing. Maybe I was just mad because Kelvin Benjamin was lighting us up, and Devin Funchess was lighting us up. Stop calling these guys power forwards, okay? That's so irritating to me, dude. And maybe if it was like Roy Williams catching the touchdowns or Herman Moore back in the day, I'd be like, yeah, cool, power forwards. But I get it. They're big receivers. They're 6'4", they're 6'5". Technically, that wouldn't be a power forward anyway in the NBA. They'd be kind of chubby point guards.
Shooting guard.
Yeah, or shooting guard. It's stop calling these guys power forwards. Sometimes cross sports referencing is cool, but for that one, I'm over it, dude. They're not power forwards, okay? They're big receivers. But that's probably just a little gripe. When you lose a game, you're salty. You're kind of looking for things to blame. Let's talk about this game, Chris Gandy, because 3-1. Some people feel like it's 3-1 with an asterisk. It could be 4-0. We were feeling high off the hog. We got some good victories. Road victory hung in there with Atlanta. But then, you're kind of looking like, okay, well, we did beat Minnesota, but they didn't have Cook. They didn't have Bradford. All right, yeah, the Giants, they do suck. Yeah, Cardinals. So it's this game and then Atlanta, those are the 2 good teams. Those are the 2 best teams we faced at home, and they were both losses. What's your vibe on this game? What's your vibe on the Lions, after this 3-2, after this disappointing loss?
Yeah, I really liked your podcast last week, right? I raved about your show to people, and
Thank you,
you know,
sir.
you kind of gave those two kind of like dream scenarios, and hey, we might want to hold our, you know, excitement back a little bit, right?
Exactly.
So I think that describes this game perfectly. If you just look at it, pre-game Panthers, right? Lions were hyped. Like you said, we could have been 4-0. We're getting ample pass rush. Zettle's stepping up. ... Where's Ziggy? Right? O-lines, they're up and down. Gave up 6 sacks last week. And then where are the big plays? Where are they at? And you're like, there's some question marks, but hey, we're getting the job done, right? We're making plays on defense. We're getting turnovers. And here we are a week later, and we're like, whoa, even more concern for the O-line. Another 6 sacks. Now, where the hell is Ziggy, right? Stafford's fumble was a killer. I made the comments on Cam just stepping up. So, like, yes, we had the same concerns week after week. We expected some of these troubles with this team, but at the end of the day, I don't think the outlook for the team is tank and go get another quarterback like some people might say. I heard on 97.1 that people were complaining about Stafford not being a top guy again. I mean, it's like, come on, guys.
He's never going to be able to prove himself. It's sad, man. Like, until, you know, unless he wins that Super Bowl. But even then, I think it's like Stafford remains on a game-by-game basis. It's not fair. It really isn't, because Aaron Rodgers has bad games, Tom Brady, you know, the list goes on and on. But that's the deal with Stafford. And it's not just because it's him. It's because of Lions and the history with quarterbacks and the history as a team. But this dude's on a game-by-game basis, man. You hear anywhere from MVP to draft a new guy every single week.
Yeah, and you know, there's some wholeness to it, right? You know, the dude's been paid, what, $150 million in
Big
his
money.
career? You know, so I get it. But at the same time, you know, this is a week-to-week league, right? The Patriots lost to the Panthers a couple weeks ago, right? And then then Kansas City is like your Super Bowl pick is balling out. I mean, you just look at it. The Giants are 0-5. I mean,
That was my other Super Bowl pick.
Everybody can make a drastic change. So, I mean, I just think that, you know, you got to look at this like Caldwell preaches. Uncle Caldwell.
I was about to throw that in there.
16-game season. You got to enjoy the ups and downs as Lions fans. So, I mean, I really look at it and say, hey, people were in love with the Jim Bob Cooter references on whether it be Ballers, whether it be on ESPN. The guys may be in a little bit of a slump of play calling, but there's no better place to tune up your offense than to go play the Saints. We have beat the Saints 3 of the last 3 games, and I know that they shut out the Dolphins, but we know Jay Cutler very well in this division. So if you ever need a game to tune up your offense, let's go down and play New Orleans. Let's go play on a fast field. Let's go play with a team that doesn't have much of a defense, and let's go, honestly, let's go play a quarterback where we get pressure on him. There's not much he can do. So if the Lions get pressure on Drew Brees down in that fast turf stadium, let's get after him. Let's do it. Cam is a monster. He's hard to bring down. There's plays he should have easily been tackled, and we just couldn't get him on the ground.
It sucks. It does. Now, Jay Cutler, just to go back, that Wildcat, I think he had a cigarette. I think he was smoking a cigarette during that Wildcat play, man. He was so uninvolved with the play. But you're right. New Orleans, they looked great, but it was in England. England is weird, man. I mean, who's that lost 44 to zip? Was that the Ravens that lost 44 to nothing?
Baltimore.
Yeah, I mean, England is weird, man. You see so many weird things going. So I'm with you. I'm not bought, and sold and buying into this. Oh, New Orleans defense is really turning around. No, the defense is bad. This could be a big bounce back game. No doubt about it. But a few concerns for me is, like I mentioned it in that little vice versa, whatever thing I did last week. What do we do if we don't win the turnover battle? We're not going to win the turnover battle every week. Even if we end up being one of the best turnover teams in the NFL, number one, there's still going to be 3, maybe 4 times where you're not going to win that battle. So we didn't win the turnover battle, and lo and behold, it was a loss. So like some of those, those fears is kind of, rearing their ugly head. And you mentioned Ziggy. Man, I don't know. I don't know how bad this injury is. When effort is being caught into the factor with him, I know he's banged up a lot worse than people are saying. So, I'm kind of with you on all respects, man. Like, people want the sour on Cam Newton. I kept saying it too. I'm even in my fantasy football league. This guy traded Cam Newton away. I'm like, listen, dude, he traded him for Jameis Winston. I like Winston too, but Cam, number one, he's coming off this injury. He's slowly, he's shaking the rust off. So the first few weeks it looked bad because of San Francisco and Buffalo. They weren't scoring a ton. New Orleans, I'm like, don't trade the guy. This is the worst time. He's getting healthier. The shoulder is getting better. Lo and behold, you look at this game with the Patriots and then the one this week. So, we ran into a really good quarterback. The pass rush wasn't where we wanted it to be. But, you're going to have losses like this. And, when I started off the year, I was at 8-8. After those first 4 weeks, I'm like, this is not an 8-8 team. And you know what? This is not an 8-8 team. This is a bad loss. Someone said, I think on Pride Detroit. Tell me if you agree with this or not. And I kind of felt this way after the Atlanta loss. With all the steam and the hype, it kind of gets deflated after a loss like that. If you go out that next week, though, and take care of business, you kind of reset that loss. And that's kind of how I'm feeling with New Orleans. Despite it being a rough loss, kind of an eye-opener, man, maybe we're not one of the top teams in the NFC, yada, yada, yada. If we go to New Orleans, I don't care how good or bad their team or their defense, if we go to New Orleans, get that win, it kind of resets things. It kind of is like, okay, we're still in that mix. That's where I'm standing on it. Where do you stand on, like if we win against New Orleans, kind of how that shifts how you feel about the team?
Yeah, I don't think New Orleans is the barometer, right? Whether this team is going to be successful or not. But I guess I really want to say this. If we go back and look at our expectations for the season and everyone did their napkin or, end table discussion on what games you'd win and what games you would lose, 3-3 through these first 6 games is still impressive. I'm happy about where we would be, even if we lost this game. Because you go into the bye week, get a couple guys back from suspension. I think Tyree Thornton comes back. We can at least get Taylor Decker practicing again. Robinson has been a plug stopper at this point, right?
Man, you know what? That's the best compliment I think anyone has given Greg Robinson for this season. A plug stopper, because he's been a butt plug stopper, man. He's been horrible, dude.
He's been a plug stop for your drain in your tub that you got in there and that you jammed in there really good, and you got a good seal on it. But after a couple of weeks, that little seal is starting to creep open, and you're starting to lose water in the bathtub. That's what Cam Robinson is right now, and we need Taylor Decker back. I thought we could get this kid another shot here and let him revamp his career. I'm not too sold on that anymore. He can be that backup rotational. When we bring in an extra lineman to run that power offensive play, let's do it. But where we're at right now, obviously Cam is not the guy for left tackle spot, and I'm not even certain that he could even kick in the guard, which some of us thought he could do. But what I think of this team moving forward, I think a win in New Orleans would get the fan base more excited. Not will it do anything more for the team. Once you leave that Saints game, you're going into a nice little bye week, and you're going to come out and play on Sunday Night Football. That's when the season is going to have its kind of second half of the season, right? That'll be Game 7 for us. That is really going to say, okay, are the Lions for real or are the Lions not for real, right? So we got to win a couple of those games coming up. We got the Packers and Steelers. We got to win a couple of those, including that. I think that Bucs game is a big one, and beating Green Bay at least one time. So the season's going to play out however it does. But over 16 games, the first 6 games, I'm impressed. Yes, we have room for improvement. Coach Caldwell at the helm. Hopefully Jim Bob gets better at play calling. I don't want to point the finger solely at Eric Ebron, but Stafford has not played well over these last 2 games, and hopefully this ankle or whatever ailing elements he has gets behind him, because Stafford, the first 2 games, we were raving about him. Now it's like, what's wrong with him?
Yeah, it's interesting. With Jim Bob, man, and I'm not like, okay, I'm saying this now when offense has struggled. I said this, I think at some point last year even, different everything. And I'm not saying he's a bad coordinator. I like Jim Bob Cooter, but I think he's always been overhyped. I think when you're replacing Joe Lombardi, who was just, 7-step, which seemed like 30-second plays, to develop in 2015. Like he was so bad. I just felt like whoever was that next guy, we'd fall in love with, because, if the one guy is giving you an F, an F, an F, every test is an F, an F. When that next guy comes and he's giving you C's and C minuses, well, by comparison, if we're grading on the curve, then yeah. But I mean, look back at the yardage and the points. Although it's much better under Jim Bob Cooter, overall, it's not nearly as good as it was with Linehan. I know the personnel was different. I know we had a running game a year or two with Linehan. I know there's so many factors, and you had Calvin in his prime. That's a huge factor. So I'm not negating those things. But if you look at Jim Bob Cooter's, his track record, it's better than Lombardi. It's good, but it's middle of the pack. It's really bad with running and passing. It's like the upper third. It's like in that 10 range, but it isn't. I just think he's slightly overrated. But that's just my 2 cents.
I struggle. Yeah, and I struggle with grading. You got, like everything, right? I think Caldwell says that, in some of the meeting rooms and some of the pressures. Hey, y'all don't get it. At your house when
you guys are eating dinner, he's probably saying.
Yeah, we got a text message thread going right now. I'm trying to get some tickets, right? But when I think we look at everything as holistically, if we had all the answers, if we could get behind the curtain, right? If you look at the last 2 weeks versus the first couple weeks of the season, right? Stafford wasn't seeing this much pressure and wasn't getting sacked, right? Stafford was running around the first couple games, pick up some first downs. These last 2 games,
because the Giants is like they're a good pass rush, right? As well as the Cardinals. What is the difference? Is it that Greg Robinson thing you were saying? Is the Tub just
the O line? Yeah, I do think the O line has handicapped Jim Bob's play calling, right? So when you're handicapped on what you can call because of length of routes and the timing, right? Those things, you can't run those timing routes because you just don't have the time, right? A couple plays this game, Stafford missed a blitz pickup, right? And missed the Ebron wide open. I think Justin Rogers did a really good job breaking down some of the film. But if you look at just the routes and then our team receivers being able to win at routes, right? We got to be a little gimmicky.
They don't.
They don't separate. So if you can't have timing to allow these receivers like a Marvin Jones or a Golden Tate, you're not going to outrun somebody on a slant or just get somebody on a little quick bubble screen. There needs to be blockers out there and those things. So I think he's handicapped by what the offensive line can do and maybe some of the elements that Stafford's facing. So, I do want to bring this up, and I think this is getting underreported, and I think some people are starting to highlight it. But Darius Slay got killed this week. He honestly has trouble. If you go back and just look at his track record, he has trouble with bigger receivers. If you go back to Demaryius Thomas in that Broncos game a couple years ago, Sunday Night Football, we lost that game just on that one play that he just got to Demaryius. Manning just threw a duck. He got out-jumped by Slay. He out-jumped Slay and ran to the end zone. Same thing this weekend. You just look at Calvin Benjamin, just kind of got him leaning one way, got his body on him, got that third down catch to basically seal the game, right? And then Devin Funchess. Slay did not have a good game this week. I think when targeting, Cam targeted Slay, he had 155.
It was ridiculous.
Passer rating. Yeah, so Slay had a hard time with these bigger receivers, and I think that's going unreported. I hope that going next week, the game he's got to really step on is Michael Thomas, right? He's a big receiver, quicker. He's not the kind of same body type. So I think this matchup is a little bit better for the Lions. But if you compare apples to apples, the Saints beat the Panthers and the Panthers beat us. So what does that say? So
don't go there, man. Don't do that whole.
I'm not that guy either. I'm not that guy either, but logic is logic, and to say if A plus B equals C,
right?
But I'm with you. Every game's different. It's a week to week league.
The thing with Slay is weird, man, because I've seen him. I've seen him do good against bigger guys. I've seen him. It's like I think he does admirable when he faces Jordy twice a year, and I've seen him battle with Alshon. But then I have seen him struggle against like Kelvin Benjamin. This isn't the first time I've seen him struggle against Kelvin Benjamin, and like the Demaryius Thomas, I was at that game, 100%, man. He does this, and it's like he's good. He's borderline Pro Bowl, if not Pro Bowl, but it's these types of games that keeps him from being elite. In his mind, he's probably shut down, and people want to anoint him as shut down. He's really good, but it's games like this that keeps him from being elite. I mean, and we're talking about Darrelle Revis or Nnamdi Asomugha for a year or two. These guys were literally shutting guys down, man. They didn't have these lapses. They didn't have these, and everyone has a bad game. I'm not saying he's free and clear of having a bad game in order to be shut down. But I just think Slay has these a little bit more often than not. About 2 or 3 times a year, it's focus. It's just out of position. It's, you're looking at a reception, and bam, then Slay's right in the picture because he got beat, because he wasn't there. And there was some debate. Guys from Pride Detroit was kind of saying Slay got beat, and then this other guy from Twitter was saying no, and people were defending him. Slay even commented on Twitter saying, hey, this guy knows football, the person that defended him. There was too much separation in that touchdown pass, all right, between Kelvin Benjamin and Darius Slay. There's no way. There's no scenario. If it's a jump ball, if it's a rebound, I'm using a sports cross reference. If it's a rebound, if it's one of those things where the size is a factor, hey, what you going to do? Kelvin Benjamin is 6'4". In the offseason, he was about 315, it looked like. Now he's down to 245. He's a big boy, all right? I get that. That's going to happen. I mean, Slay is not diminutive, but he's going to work what he has size-wise. But when it comes down to a play where Kelvin Benjamin is several steps behind you, he beat you. I don't care what the scheme was. I don't care if someone said, well, he was covering his third. I don't want to hear it. Slay is
he got beat.
He got beat. He's supposed to be a 4-3 guy. Thank you.
4-5-5.
Thank you.
No question. But let's throw in there, Cam dropped a dime. I mean, that's true, I know too. That Trent Dilfer likes to do those Dilfer dimes. I hate the guy. I think he's a terrible quarterback. He's just an average commentator. But that was a dime.
It was.
I mean, when I saw that from my seat, I'm in section 141. I'm getting older now, Jerry. I keep reminding myself I need to take my ass to Lens Crafters because clearly I can't see any play on the other side of the field. But I saw that throw. I was like, oh, that's a touchdown. I was like, that ball just dropped right in there.
He dropped it down.
And here we are, pop, 2 steps. And he really didn't even have to fight for those steps. The ball was just inside the pylon, just across the goal line, pop, 2 steps, he's touchdown, So, I mean, I can fault Slay for not being in position, not being on his hip on that throw. But that was a dime. But I'm with you. 4-5 versus 4-3, I don't care what math you do, geometry, trigonometry, or calculus. That don't match up. Slay should have been on top of that. So let's hope he bounces back this week. And I think, hopefully the fire that the Lions are catching this week in the media, well, maybe lack thereof, because the Lions never get much media coverage. It's one thing I do hate. But hopefully this gives them a chance to, hey, right the ship, get down to New Orleans, and, man, let's have a heck of a game going into the bye week.
There we go. Now let's get a prediction from you. When I hit you up and I was working on getting some guests for this week and everything, and I told you I want you to join me. I'm like, it's going to be a 10-minute segment, and it never works out that way because I think ultimately it's going to have to come down to we're going to have to get our show going, man. We've talked about it. The guys at Detroit Sports Podcast wanted it to happen, and we got the chemistry, we got it going. So I know I got you overtime. Hopefully you don't charge me like in my field of work. If it's overtime, we charge you time and a half. If it's on Sunday, we charge you double. So if I can get one more question out of you without being charged, give us a prediction for the game, New Orleans and Detroit. You don't have to be a score. It can be a score or whatever you want to do. Tell us about New Orleans versus Detroit this upcoming Sunday.
Yeah, I'm looking at ESPN right now, and yeah, they suspended my girl Jamel Hill, but I still support them. But Matchup Predictor is calling New Orleans 67%, 67.5 to 32-2.
Oh, that's pretty extreme.
Yeah, and they tend to take the home team quite a bit. It looks like the pick center is giving the Saints 5, or the Lions are dogs, right? So the Lions are expected to lose by 5 points, and I think that sounds about right. With the question mark with Stafford's health, the inability to protect the quarterback, Saints coming off a bye week, beating the Panthers, making Carolina effectively turn the ball. I think it was 3 interceptions by Cam Newton, and the Lions couldn't do any of that. I think health is on the Saints side, and I actually don't see the Lions winning this football game. I think it's going to be a nice scoring affair, maybe to give us some good emotion and good gumption to get things going into the bye week in the right direction. But I struggle with the Lions going down to New Orleans and win this game. We haven't been able to run the ball consistently all year. We all got excited when Amir Abdullah had a 95-yard rushing game, or 94, whatever it was. He came back this week and had, 30-something yards?
Yep, it was a disappointment.
So I struggle with confidently today on Tuesday, not knowing, let's say Monday or Tuesday, I can't even remember, but knowing what the health of Matthew Stafford is, the question marks on that offensive line, and really coming off the health factor of the Saints having a week to buy and prep for the Lions, I don't see the Lions going down to New Orleans and winning this game. But I'm rooting for them.
There you
go. Let's say I'll give the Saints winning this one 31-27, very similar to this past week.
I can't fault you for that, man. I'm still working on my prediction, as I don't have that many minutes left on my show. I'll have one shortly, but just say it like I do, man. You got them losing, but you hope you're wrong. You'll be gladly, appreciative to be wrong on this one, dude. But you gotta use the head sometime over the heart, man. And I think I'm going to give the Lions the edge, but we'll see how it goes. You kind of swaying me a little bit, man. We are banged up pretty bad. Listen, Chris, as always, it's been a pleasure. Tell the fine folks here listening to the podcast where they can get your takes, not just on this show, but your regular Twitter takes, your comments. Commentary is always top notch. Where can they find you, Chris?
Yeah, you can follow me. My personal page is at I Need Limes, INEEDLIMES. Got to give you the backstory one of these days to that.
I'm still waiting on it, man. We're gonna pin you in the corner and get it one of these days.
And those Detroit guys, or those DET guys on Twitter, I manage both of those pages. You'll get my personal thoughts more so, on some of the geopolitical things going on, or more risque retweets. But I talk a lot more Lions and a lot more Detroit or national sports on those DET guys. But look forward to interaction and feedback on the show, man.
Excellent, bro. As always, Mr. Chris Gandy, it's been a pleasure. We got to get you back on here. I'm going through some ideas for the bye week. I want to do something kind of fun, kind of creative, maybe a panel of sorts. So, if you put a little bit of time in your schedule for us, we're going to get you on here really soon, man. Thanks for joining us, bro.
Lock me in. I'm there. Appreciate it, Jerry.
Later. All right. As always, want to thank Mr. Chris Gandy for his wonderful insight, adding to the show as he always does. Before we get out of here, I mentioned it, I'm kind of going back and forth. Gandy's kind of swaying my decision here. We're talking about this prediction before we say happy trails, but I felt as though the Lions would win before I talked to Gandy, but I was iffy. Hearing his reasoning, it does make sense. We are banged up, but I think the Lions have looked more consistent so far this year. Whereas, New Orleans it looked hot, then they didn't. Early on it was kind of bad, then it looked good. I think the Lions, sans one game, has looked consistent for a good 4 games. Now, I know some people will argue about Atlanta, but overall, I think the Lions have looked more consistent. I feel as though the defense, they'll be looking to make a statement. Okay, what is this team? What is this defense? I think they'll be out and they'll be in full. I mean, they're going to be focused. I think sometimes, it happens. You start feeling yourself and all the accolades and things happen. They're going to be locked in. So that's going to help. It's going to make it a really good team on the offensive side of the ball. You add to the fact that New Orleans, I'm not believing the shutout. I think this defense is still bad. I think this defense still gives up a lot in the passing game. And speaking of using sports references, I think Stafford's looking to rebound. So all those things, including the fact that we've had success in New Orleans a time or 2 or 3, I'm picking the Lions to win this game. Final score 27-24 in favor of our beloved boys in Honolulu Blue and Silver. Listen, guys, this was a fun show today. Got to bring a guest on, which is always nice. Chris Gandy's just a delight. He's just a delight to have, man. So we're going to close it out. But as always, we'll be right back here. It's going to be a bye week. So we'll get a chance to talk about the New Orleans game, but then we're going to have a little lull. So I got a few creative juices flowing, some things in mind. Stay tuned. We'll talk about that a little bit later on a show to be determined down the road. But you will hear us next Monday after the New Orleans game. Win, lose, or draw, we'll be here. As always, I want to thank each and every one of you for listening. Check me out on PrivateTrade.com. Check me out on Twitter at Jerry Mallory NFL. And check me out right here next week on the Hindsight 20 podcast.